My name is Abigail Iquo Isuo, and I am half English, half Nigerian, born in the UK. I am a transpersonal integrative psychotherapist and retreat leader and author of Awakening the Masterpiece. That means that I work with the horizontal and the vertical. So we could see the horizontal as the psychological developmental path that we've all been on from birth to where we find ourselves now. And that meets at some point the vertical, which is what we can see as the spiritual. And what do we mean by spiritual? I mean grounded, feet on the ground, and really searching for the truth, the depth of who we are, which is the essential aspects, the qualities that are representative of our true nature. That part of us that is authentic, that often got lost because we were born into certain families, certain environments, that meant we needed to survive. And so actually in our attempts to survive, we let go of that is essential to us, that is authentic, innocent, pure, wild, instinctual, in order to move through life and make sure that we survive it. And so we adapt and we become particular identities, particular personalities, and we wear often, all of us, a particular mask that allows us to go through life, gain approval, be validated, feel like we belong, and in doing so, we often distance ourselves from that authentic, real deep part of our essential and core nature. Yes, we're born with it. We're born, we come in, and I think we're all incredibly unique. And we come in with a particular life force. We come in with a point of light. We come in with essential qualities. And they are really individual to each one of us. Of course, there's a universality to humanity, but each individual, I believe, is unique in their own expression of their essential core being. Maybe you could call it their genetic code. Maybe you can call it their spiritual deep point of light. But yes, I think we're born with it. We come in systemically. So we are encoded, and that can be in our ancestral lineage. But also, of course, when we come in, then the nurture bit starts to influence. And then that becomes the psychological piece, that whole developmental path of how should I adapt and adjust myself to be able to sustain my life and being human. But of course, when we come in, who's to say that we haven't been impregnated by unfulfilled, unresolved, unprocessed traumas, unprocessed life dreams that were held by our ancestors? So that's when it becomes fascinating. And working with individuals, of which I've worked with many, it's very different and unique for each person. Where do we put our significance? Where do we put our full attention as we are journeying through this life? And what then gets to manifest? Is it unresolved dreams? Is it essential coding that just wants to be expressed innovatively in ourselves? Or is it following a path of survival? And that's where I find really a passionate place for myself. Like, how do we establish what we are doing in regards to it being something that sustains our life and we're surviving and maybe pleasing our parents or our grandparents? And when do we step into our real, true, fundamental, and raw expression that actually is a unique imprint to us? I often joke, but I think it might be true, that I was 6 foot when I was 10 years old. And I grew up in the north of UK and the north of England, and I had a different color skin, and I stood out. And so I was always intrigued by the differences between each and every one of us as individuals. But in my own pathway, like I met so many different fabulous people on my journey through sports. I was very sporty, through my pursuits in the psychological world, through modeling. I got to take part in different aspects of life. And therefore I met all kinds of incredibly interesting people. And I just thought, wow, what makes us different? What actually really is the fundamental drivers of human nature? And I was always interested in potential. Really, what is our deepest potential? What is the best version of ourselves? What is the best version of me? How can I feel fulfilled, happiness, joy, celebration, whilst also loving depth and richness, and not just talking about the everyday, how's the weather? And so getting into these deep conversations with people who seemed to me to love life or be intrigued by life gave me such a passion. And so I went through quite a journey from the sports, from modeling into the psychological kind of realms and fields of life. And I got to learn the different modalities that touch people, that really can help change. And then that became intriguing. What actually sustains change? Because most people say they want change, want a better life, but actually end up in comfort zones and just tolerating life. And I always thought, actually, there must be a particular kind of fundamental foundation that really upholds change, which then took me into the intrigue in relation to potential, transformation, change, growth, evolution. What actually is it that drives transformation? Such a huge field in and of itself, that the ability to be vulnerable, the ability to tell the truth, the ability to really stand in what is really significant for you and be with it and really put your whole life's attention and energy into it. So it became, and it continues to be something that really drives me, that passion for transformation, for change, for truth. And what is truth? And truth isn't just opinion or what I feel is salient right now. Truth at its core then takes us, I believe, into the spiritual elements, like really at the core of humanity. What is truth? And I love to think that it's continuously changing, it's continuously evolving. And so you can't grasp it. It's not kind of going to be the same today as it is tomorrow. And what better way to live that actually there is one thing that is permanent in life, and that's change. And being involved in that and really diving deep into it is fundamentally significant to me. I see in the world and in my private practice such a lot of disassociation, disorders, illnesses, unhappiness. I mean, I could continue. Isolation, alienation. And right now, I think in the world that we're living, there's such a lot of extremities. There's polarization, fragmentation, a world that many people are addicted in different ways. Addicted to substances, addicted to having to work super hard and improve themselves, and therefore we have burnouts and workaholism. I think, in the world we are watching a lot of suffering. And so often when people come to want to do the deeper aspects of work and look at themselves and really find out about themselves, it's about really creating better versions of themselves, but not in a way of self-improvement, in a way that I might call self-mastery. And that I am intrigued with, that I do love to be involved in. There is nothing better than being in a relationship with a person that is based on authenticity, based on truth. And you can see and watch people grow and become amazing versions of themselves. They have these aha moments, their hearts open, and then you really get to see, wow, what love feels like, what it's like to touch the sacred, what it's like to be in relationship with another in a way that is really divine. And I really don't mean that in some, highfalutin kind of spiritual bypass way. I mean, that's the way I love to relate to people. That for me just brings such an expansion in my heart, in my intuition, in what is possible. And so, yes, to answer your question, I do want to be involved in work that allows that transformation and helps. Help is an interesting word, but facilitates people to become more and more of their best selves. I think resistance is part of our human nature, but what I have seen in my experience in my professionalism and in my personal life is resistance really keeps us stuck. And it means that those experiences that perhaps we're trying to get away from repeat themselves. And so sometimes it does need a little bit of fierceness. And, I think we are all very different. There are different characters. And I just happen to be a person who's passionate, full of energy, incredibly sensitive, but also I have a power. And I've played a lot in my life with what Jung might call the animus and the anima. And those aspects of the feminine and the masculine dance within me. And so I have learned how to be in the nurturing, receptive, sensitive space when required, but also to be assertive and to be fierce and really to put my strength forward when it's necessary. And I think the dance between the two and perhaps years of experience has allowed me to read a person energetically, to read what perhaps is deeper in their longing. And a lot of us are longing for change and transformation, but afraid to go there. We haven't had the guidance, we don't know the next steps for all kinds of reasons. And so we often end up staying in a comfort zone and just tolerating. It's one of my kind of another fascination to watch how we have regulated and coped and managed our life. And that gives us a certain experience, but it definitely doesn't give us the full wholeness of our experience. And so the journey for me is about being able to integrate different aspects, as many elements of our character, personality, being as we possibly can. And that takes courage. It means you have to be bold to be able to face those things that are often seen as taboo, to face those things that have been suppressed, have been hidden, have been disassociated from. And that is a truth for all of us. When we grow up, we disconnect from authenticity. We also disconnect from overwhelm and pain and trauma. And I like to think we do that as an intelligent strategy for the moment when the conditions are ready for us to return and really embrace that got left behind, but that brings a wholeness to our being. And often that is an edge. And so when I'm working with people, I can often see that part where we're just meeting that edge, where the possibility could be that all of a sudden, yes, you might have to face what might be seen as the shadow or darkness, and you would have to go to those places that you were forbidden to go to, either by yourself or society or authority in some way. And actually facing those deeper parts of ourselves that are hurt, that are in pain, is crucial. Because they are exactly the parts that really need to be embraced again, reconnected to. And so when I'm working with someone and that edge is just there. Sometimes you can see just a little bit more, especially because I've done a lot of work on myself and I know it in myself. It's that moment where we could either turn away and come back to a comfort zone and have more and more of what's familiar, because that's an easy place to live, or we have that accompaniment. And it's great when there's another adult who is there with you and really willing to hold your hand. That next step is just one baby step into what could be a transformational moment, an aha moment, which I have seen over and over again. And I really believe that we're so much more robust than we give ourselves credit for, because we live in that familiar place. But stepping over that edge is really essential if we want to feel integration, if we want to move closer to wholeness and find more and more of our potential. And the truth is, it takes so much more energy to keep those disassociated parts of ourselves hidden than it does to just take that one big mighty step. Baby step, mighty step, they're the same thing in these kind of moments. To then think, wow, that was it. That was what I needed to face and really be seen, held, and understood in. And often when I'm working one-on-one, that's exactly what happens. And when I'm working in groups, then there is another audience that is observing. And the human being requires that. They require to be seen, held, heard, understood. And then in that moment, it's like, poof, transformation is really possible. And then it's sustainable because it's an innate, visceral moment that you don't forget so easy. When I talk about sustainability, this I think is such an important piece, because actually it requires devotion, it requires discipline, and so to some extent it is a lifestyle. It's like you have tuned in and you have this reference point inside of you that really allowed you to see something bigger, something more sacred, something heart-opening. And coming back to that moment becomes a real necessity. And so how do you do that? You have really got to integrate it into your life in ways where every now and then you take a pause and you allow yourself to feel back in. It's not enough just awareness. The next step of that is to be participatory. You have to make that a part of your very being. And so that actually you have the reference point. How do you make sure that on a daily basis you're training your mind and you're catching the moments where you're in reaction, let's say, and the moments when you're in response? And those moments when you're in response, what is the difference inside of your being? The difference I feel is when we are just going in life and we're just reacting to life, our energy leaks out. When we're in response and we're coming back to those moments that really are visceral and innate and true to our essential self, there is an ability for the energy to be circulatory. So it's circulating in your very being. You can hold, for example, anger. Let's just talk about anger. Most people have anger as a taboo. You should never be angry. You should regulate. You should suppress it. My feeling is that anger is such a passionate life force energy. It will give you boundaries. It will tell you when something is about to hurt you, when something is overstepping your personal space. So you want to have that life force energy. You just don't want it to leak and become power over outside of yourself. So what is it like to allow that surge of energy inside and let it circulate so that you are participating in your own inner space, in your own inner world? You can practice that daily. You can practice that with joy, you can practice that with anger, you can practice that with sadness, with pain. Is it easy? No, but it allows you to meet emotions in a way that they're not controlling you, but that you are experiencing aliveness. Because if we shut them off, we shut off sadness, we also shut off joy. And so learning how to be with this energetic internal aliveness in whichever way it shows up, whether that is sadness and pain or whether that is excitement and joy, without kind of making them right or wrong. Can we experience emotions without manipulating them? And in doing so, can we then start to meet people and relate to people in a way that all of that life force is happening in your inner sphere, and it's coming through you in a way that informs you rather than controls you or the other person. So the sustainability in this sense is the ability to be with the intensity of your own inner world and then meet people, life from that space. And that becomes a real lifestyle. I have a private practice which after COVID moved more online, which is beautiful because then I get to work globally with people, with individuals, with couples, and with groups. And that work really is about meeting the person, the people, exactly where they are. And that is a beautiful piece because it's a bit like Carl Jung said. He said, read all of the books and then forget them all. And it is a little bit like that because I feel working with people is not a methodological, structured kind of pathway. It is more about an energetic fit where you recognize what that person is looking for, is coming to you for. And that can be a wide range of things, whether it's relationship problems or whether it is to find their potential and purpose and significance in life, whether it is to really look at issues that they have felt they have held since childhood, which have to do with certain traumas people have been through. It can be a wide range. And then I get to meet that person in that space to work through the patterns of behavior that might be influencing their life in negative ways. It is about understanding the behavioral patterns, the emotional and the psychological, spiritual perspectives. How we meet life is very important, and most of us see life as how we are rather than how life is. And that's a journey in understanding, oh, this is my perspective and this is reality. That's an interesting piece. And so we get to understand those different patterns of behavior and we move towards what might be called the descent. And the descent is an opportunity to face, like I said previously, those deeper, darker, more shadowy aspects of our being and face them. And in doing so, we grow an emotional resilience, we grow robustness, and we surprise ourselves. Because most of us don't realize how capable we are until we face things that perhaps previously we would never have allowed ourselves to face. And so there is this descent, and you get to meet parts of yourself that need loving. And I really call the descent on many levels of falling in love with yourself. And I mean that really from a deep, visceral space. Because if you don't love yourself, as the cliche goes, how do you love someone else? And in that moment where you start to love aspects of yourself, you start to understand why you behave or why you were conditioned or how you were molded and shaped in a certain way, and who you thought you were as one particular identity actually gets to change. It gets to transform. Because then you start to feel deeper elements of yourself that are perhaps more sensitive, that are perhaps more joyful, more real, more powerful, without that being a false notion. It's not an effort in. You come home to yourself and you get to experience what we might call relaxed confidence. And in that space, I believe there's a birthing of sovereignty, a birthing of dignity, a birthing of just a union of your different aspects, the union of the masculine and the feminine, the union of the power and the sensitive, the union of what we might call the good and the bad. And when they come together and there's an integration, I think it gives that much more boldness, that much more dignity to your expression and how you meet life and how you take care of yourself. And then that nurturing of one's own being and one's own soul becomes such a passionate, delicious way to live your life. And that's what I call a lifestyle. And so working with people, I get to work through all of those different arenas and meet people really in their true authenticity, which becomes such a joy. That's where, your vocation becomes a vacation. We have reached a place in life right now where it seems quite chaotic. There are polarities, there is fragmentation, there's lots of disorders, there's lots of unhappiness and suffering. And just watching that for me, when I kind of come back home to myself, I'm like, which part do I play in this? I always have to ask myself a question of what is truly significant for me, what really matters. And I think that goes beyond purpose. This is like, what is significant for me and what can I bring that might be of significance to life and the people that I touch and I meet. And it has to be about self-mastery. And I don't mean that in some, wise and untouchable way. I mean it like getting to be with each person that I work with in a way that helps them come closer and closer to their true meaning, their true capacities, what they are capable of. And if that can bring more and more integration and more wholeness, then I think each drop creates the ocean. A lot of our problems are as we identify with what is right and what is wrong. But what happens if you could stand on that side, you could see what was right. If you could stand on this side, you can see what is right. I've worked with such diverse people that if you put them all together in one group, they would never get on. Yet I have experienced the possibility of being with all of these diverse, culturally different human beings and finding something in each and every one of them that was sacred. And I really feel that what we are missing in this world is the connection to the sacred. And I don't mean the worship of a God or Jesus Christ or Allah or whichever God you worship. I feel it's more about the capacity of recognizing the essential truths of being human. And how we then deliver those in our expressions and in our everyday meetings. In a world where there's so much fragmentation and such a lot of separation and isolation and alienation and therefore suffering, what I feel is missing is that collective community. That ability to come home to self and meet the other and meet others from a place of true integrity, true love. And that for me is about being able to open our hearts to difference, to ignorance, and not need to be self-righteous and have all of the answers. More so to listen again, more so to hold again, more so to come in communion. And communion is the sacred. Maybe in 2026, that's a very different level or kind of communion from what perhaps it was in the past. And it's innovative. It's also exciting times where new possibilities can be birthed. But I do feel it is very much about returning to the sacred and finding what that is for you, what is significant, what is divine, what is meaningful, and how can you align with that and then be in the world with that. Not everybody wants to change, and I think that's a human right, right? You have the right to decide what is significant in your life. And if you are finding in your life that actually you're up against the same circular, repetitive experiences, like you keep choosing the wrong partner, you are in a job that makes you miserable, you are with friends who trigger you all of the time. You don't have friends. Then you can either continue with that lifestyle and complain and blame and shame and project and point out to the world, or it comes a time when actually that just becomes excruciating and you can't bear to live that way anymore. Something can happen in your life which makes you wake up. I feel empty. I feel alone. Nothing is actually bringing joy for me anymore. That's when you have left it perhaps too long, and that there is no other opportunity or choice except to do some work on yourself. I feel no one gets away with it. You just either live a life that is mediocre, or you get an opportunity to move towards your potential. It's a choice. And yeah, it can be hard work. Living a mediocre life is also hard work and miserable and boring. But it always surprises me because many people still opt for an average life. So the question of why would you want to do this is, why wouldn't you? Especially if what you get to experience is an open heart, connection, self-mastery, a feeling of your own relaxed confidence, peace inside of yourself, an experience where there's a reciprocity with another, where actually you really feel heard, understood, and met in a way that just touches something so deep in your soul. That then becomes magic. And I think, magic exists, but not magic in the woohoo way. But, you think of something and there's a synchronicity and all of a sudden life opens to you and you have an experience that really touches something so beautiful and precious inside. They're moments, they're glimpses of depth, richness, wisdom. And that, I feel, is such a shame to miss out on. Imagine you get to your deathbed and you think, I wish. I don't think we get to the deathbed and say, I wish I hadn't met the sacred. I wish I hadn't experienced love. I wish I hadn't felt that deep peace inside. It's the other way around. It's like, I wish I had. If only I'd had that courage or that boldness just to take a bash at it. Back in the day, I would have groups that were quite separate, maybe you could call them specialized. So there would be family constellation groups, breathwork groups, dance groups, psychedelic kind of medicine, plant medicine groups. And what I've found is it's beautiful to combine them all together. And so when I run groups, which are sometimes just for women or mixed, there's an opportunity to bring all of those methodologies into the arena and work very deeply, individually, but with the group culture. So there is that communion, which is a very special way of witnessing each other, being held, learning from each other in a universal space. As what you often get to see is a universality to our issues. And they might be very, very personal, but they're relative. And so the way I experience, let's say, a closed heart might be different from the way you experience a closed heart, but it still will have some remnants of similarities. And so in the group space, there's a fabulous opportunity to actually feel like you're part of a movement, of something that resonates so deeply inside your being, and you're not alone. One of the retreats that I lead is called the Path of Love. Very beautiful, amazing retreat. And it's in, I think, 16 different countries now. And what it offers is that meeting of the psychological and the spiritual. So it meets you where you're at. The age ranges, I think I have worked with people in the Path of Love from 17 to 84. And so it is across the board, and different generations, of course, but also different cultures and different walks of life. We have initially an interview. You would come if you were interested, something isn't quite working in your life, or you want to experience more, or there are specific kind of issues holding you back in relationships, in career, in your social life, in your spiritual life, whatever it might be. The Path of Love has this container and capacity to hold whatever you're showing up with. So you would do an interview with one of the facilitators, one of the leaders, and you would get to express where you feel you're at and why you think a process like Path of Love could meet you there and be beneficial. And so once you're through the interview, which is really just a process to see if this is the right process for you in your life, you get to join 30, 40 participants. And I think the wonderful thing about Path of Love is we have also the equivalent number of staff. And the staff are core to the process. They have done the process. Most of them are volunteers, and they come back to deepen what they found, which is in and of itself testimony, but also to be of service. And then they're really holding a space that is based on the love of the truth, and the love of the truth from that core, essential, authentic space. And then we have core staff who are therapists with assistants, and we break you up into smaller groups of 10, 11, 12, depending on the configuration. And the opportunity is that you get to stand in what is salient for you. And the structure of Path of Love is that it builds on itself each day. So we are starting with a real deep grounding so that people can really anchor themselves and get to speak in front of crowds or their particular group and the staff in a way that really is truthful to themselves and where they are at. And in that space, they're witnessed. And when we're witnessed, something melts. And as the days go on, we get to look at deeper, more integral aspects, which might kind of represent the negative aspects of our life and our life experience. And in so doing, as those days are accumulating, the masks are melting. And that we have presented to the world starts to become an idea of the past. And something more genuine comes through. Something more raw and innocent comes through. The sensitivity of your being. And when you get to feel that you can be in that space and not be attacked and not be judged, there is something fundamental that becomes an innate quality that is yours. Because you get to realize that you've been hiding is perhaps the most powerful part of who you are. And so the invitation is to realize that we run away from is actually so much more encompassing in a way that is really helping your profundity, your potential. And being seen in that true light is something no one can take away from you. And then you get to understand what it means to be held by something bigger than you. And that happened by turning in towards yourself and allowing the vulnerability, the sensitivity to show up. And as it shows up, this crazy thing of this true empowerment, this true embodiment surfaces. And you get to be realized, let's say, in your own actualization, your own actualized self, your own full expression, without pretense, without performing. And no one can take that away from you. When you've been witnessed in that way, you can't undo it. So then it becomes this incredible gift that starts to guide you, starts to show you the way, starts to be a big part of how you want to experience your life and be seen in your life. We go through all of these different kind of exposure exercises, let's say, and we use the body a lot so that we're moving from the head into the feelings and getting acquainted again with what makes us real, what makes us this unique expression of ourselves. So the body, the movement, the feelings, we stay outside of the group room in silence, so that we're not leaking our energy and we're coming back home and really getting to be with the aliveness of the intensity of what is being released inside of us. You end up finding, reconnecting and recalibrating with who you are underneath the masks, underneath the pretenses. And it's really beautiful to see who you thought you were actually is probably an imitation, a diluted version of who you really are and who you really can be, which is super exciting. And so celebrating that in an individual within a group becomes really this amazingly ecstatic experience for the staff, for the leaders, for the facilitators, and of course for the participants. It is the opportunity and invitation to come home to self, to find what really matters, to be in your longing, and to live it. The path of love isn't some spiritual bypass or glamorous kind of Valentine's Day idea of love. The path of love is really facing the obstacles in your way, the barriers in your way. What gets in between you and love? What's in between you and freedom? What is in between you and spontaneity, in between you and innocence? And for each person, that can show up very differently. For some people, it is a lot of traumas. For some people, it's real self-righteousness. For some people, it's fear. For some people, it's pain. For some people, it can be just a real stubborn need to remain stoic. In Path of Love, the opportunity or the invitation is to face what it is that keeps you stuck, that keeps you small, that keeps you suppressed, that keeps you in repetition, that keeps you in a comfort zone, that keeps you in places that make you miserable. And so when we're looking at Path of Love, it's such a huge, expansive opportunity to feel what love is for you. And I think if I look at it, for me, it's about freedom. It's about really aligning with my own longing, which is significance, which is about aligning with the mystery. You know, but that's different for everybody. And to get there, you do have to face some hard obstacles, things that have been there for life, that you have thought have always identified you. Many of us are fixated in those ways. Many of us just think, this is how it is for me for the rest of my life. And then we settle. And so Path of Love is challenging that tolerance. It's challenging your regulatory management skills that keep you in a particular predicament. And so to do that, you will feel the intensity. There will be tears. There will be anger, frustrations. There will be these internal kind of discomforts. And you have to be willing to be with the discomfort. You know, I think most of us look for quick fixes. Most of us want to feel reassured. Most of us want to be at ease. And so we do tend to go for that feels comfortable. And Path of Love asks you to step out of that and to be in the dis-ease of what you are experiencing. The dis-ease of humanity, we all have it. We all have, to some regard, that aspect inside that just doesn't feel fulfilling, that isn't any longer satisfactory, that just doesn't bring pleasure anymore. May have once upon a time, and some of the strategies that we have used have helped us survive. But we get to a certain point, many of us, where surviving isn't enough. And we want to step out of the survival comfort zone. And we want to feel that there is more, that there is possibility for fulfillment. There is that place where we can feel a deep tranquility inside, a harmony. And so in order to get there, it's almost like you've got to pass through the doors of survival, because they were never meant to be the place that we were to live. They were exactly that, surviving. And what is it like then to pass through the doors of surviving and really face what is in the way? Those taboo places, the shadow places, the dark places. That's the opportunity to discover the core attributes of who you are. And connect to them, face them, own them. Radical responsibility. This is who I am underneath. This is what shapes me. And I'm not going to look the other way anymore. I will take full responsibility for who I am, what has happened to me, all of my expressions, and allow that to metabolize inside of me. And once we digest some of those hard barriers and obstacles, then we don't have to keep pressing them into the corner. I sometimes feel like the obstacles are like being in a swimming pool with a beach ball, and we're pressing them down and pressing that beach ball under the water. And to press it under the water, we have to have contact with it. So that we're resisting will always persist. And so freeing the beach ball is what we're doing. And we're looking at this beach ball floating in front of us. And when we look at what it is we've been running from, it becomes something that melts, or something that we can integrate, and something that makes us even more whole. So the Path of Love is very much a journey of facing that we resist, that we are intolerant of, that triggers us. All of those aspects that are frightening. But we're doing it, and we're doing it alongside other companions who are our fellow travelers on the path, and who want very much the same thing, to be their actualized, individuated selves. I have worked in different arenas, from prisons to psychiatric hospitals to the fashion world to everyday individuals who are looking at their issues. And I think what becomes really a heartfelt pain for me is to see that we live under our potential, that we really haven't been shown the way to live to our full capacity. And I count myself in that. And that becomes an exciting driver. And when I work with each individual, no matter which culture, no matter which field of society a person comes from, I always manage to find something interesting, intriguing about that human being. And so the book that I'm writing is very much about awakening what I call the masterpiece. And the masterpiece is that we individually and uniquely are. And I feel like it's a crime to go to our deathbed and not have glimpsed what that could possibly look like, feel like, taste like in this lifetime. Because let's face it, this is not a dress rehearsal, right? We get one shot at this life. To really watch individuals touch into that part that I feel is a masterpiece fills me with so much joy. And like I was saying before, it's not an easy path. And so many people say, but why would I want to look at the shadow? I don't want to look at those dark parts. And we've all been trained to move away from pain, to move away from overwhelm, to regulate, manage, and cope. And so when I'm saying, hey, we got to look at this, and a lot of the work I do is about the descent. It's about looking at how we have been conditioned and identified and fixated in areas of our life that keep us rigid and stuck and inflexible, which of course is the opposite of coherence and evolution and transformation. The book came from a place of recognizing that, yes, we all found particular survival strategies and pathways. We all hold our energy so differently. Some of us disassociate. Some of us kind of become super rigid and controlled. Some of us become inflated and performance-oriented. So we're all very different with how we navigate our lives and how we learn to survive, and that takes us so far. And many of us get to the top of our careers with those beautiful strategies, so they're not wrong. But they're still missing the authentic masterpiece that I feel each of us has come into this world to actualize. That might be a right conclusion or it might be a wrong conclusion, but it is definitely one that brings joy and aliveness in me and in others. When we reach, gosh, that is significant to me, and we reach that place inside and we express it and we're met outside, it brings such a lot of beauty. And I think I've been always fascinated with beauty on the outside, the aesthetics of life, and still am, but beauty on the inside. And the combination of those two, for me, is a masterpiece. That is a burning passion for me right now. Really looking at, okay, I recognize your conditioning. Let's take a look and let's be brave and bold at confronting it with compassion. So that actually there is a possibility for the sovereignty, the dignity, the union inside of your being to flourish, to manifest, and significance is present, the sacred is possible, and we get to experience in all of that the celebration of what it means to be you in a world with other people doing the same. I got to this point where I stopped kind of planning my life, and I really feel like I'm opening up to more and more of the mystery. So I want to live a life where my own prejudices, my own perceptions, my own ideologies are not something that stops me or become obstacles for me to realize more of the essential. That universal quality of aligning myself with the bigger forces feels really important. I get to those places sometimes in altered states, whether that's through dance, whether that's through ceremony or rituals. And I've touched into places where there is just such divinity, where I get to feel that everything has a place. If I got to my deathbed and I hadn't realized the significance and manifested significance in the way that makes sense to me, I think that would be a sad moment. I've devoted a lot of my life to uncovering, confronting, celebrating every part that has been and challenging and exciting. Really getting to experience the fullness or the wholeness of myself in all the ways that that can come is a little bit of a mission. And I also feel as I'm getting older, there's a part of me that also appreciates peace and silence and subtlety so very much. And so should I get to my deathbed and think, oh, there was just something I missed, that would be a little bit of a sad moment.